Top late afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're outside the shop. We're going to do a little taste test comparison. Kind of a nice little treat. We have a standard version ms661. That's the North American version saw right there. I don't actually know how long they've been available in America, but we have one. So it's bone stock. I checked out the weights and measures on my scale. We're gonna have to upgrade. It was all over the place, so I snuck in, got the good ones out of the bathroom. 19.2 fully fueled, 19.2 fully fueled. So this saw has the Mondo dogs. I weighed one of these earlier this summer and it weighed 19.0, so I'm thinking that's a little bit more accurate. That's Mr. Green's saw. We had to put a new crank in it, so it has a new crank and new seals and new bearings. The top end is the same. I was actually running that saw when it happened. I was cutting about a 9-inch or 10-inch spruce log or something, and it kind of rolled and it caught and the crank popped off the end. So yeah, they're kind of a known quantity to do that. It just kind of like, that was over a year ago now when that happened. It dropped, or it rolled and pinched, kind of rolled and dropped and pinched, and it just went kaboom, and the end of the crank popped off. So we're getting this thing ready to rock and roll one more time here. We're going to run it against the stock ms661. Standard, we saw that saw go head to head with the 500i earlier. Well, I don't know in the order of posting, but I ran it, and this saw has more low end power than a 500i. It's noticeable. I think it actually cuts a little bit faster as well. It's up a little bit of horsepower. I think we're 7.0 versus 7.1 for the North American version, but I haven't even checked any of the information out, because like I said, they just released these recently in America. So it's warmed up. We're going to run it and check it out. Okay, so we checked out on this earlier saw off with the 500i. We actually checked the stops and came up with about 48 to about 52. So that's about where she's running. And we watched just now, it puts a pretty good amount of pressure on the chain, that being the torque of the saw. When you run the saw, oh, we better check something out real quick. You run the saw, you can feel the torque in the handlebars, you can't really see it. So the big scuttlebutt on the 500i, from my perspective anyway, is the flexi flyer operation. That thing flops around like a salmon on the deck. This saw is a lot more solid. I'm thinking that we can see quite a bit of movement. We can hear something hitting in there, but essentially it's a lot more solid longitudinally and laterally compared to the 500i. It has more power, but weighs quite a bit more. So I guess when a guy's buying one of these saws, something to consider. I had a guy, I think I mentioned this before with the 500i video, a guy that I know that falls timber, ran 46s, 660s, 661s, whatever. He's a Stihl guy from way back. He bought a 500i. He says it's spongy, technically. He said it was kind of spongy, the mounts. He didn't like that. So I guess it's going to depend on where you're coming from. On a personal level, I think I mentioned that I don't think the 500i is a good saw to use if you're kind of hard on your equipment, because what's going to happen is you're going to be tearing those spring mounts out, in my humble opinion anyway. So this isn't necessarily going to be a super fair test at the moment. This saw is going to win, but I got the okay to keep this saw a little bit longer. So I'm going to have to put the hurt on the 661 and see how they compare. So with any luck, in about a week, I'll be done with that operation, and we can do a little saw off again and see how they compare. I think on a personal level, the 661s have a little bit better design for torque. I know that my 461 does really well, the Torque Monster version. You could actually probably do a Torque Monster 661 if you wanted to. Haven't really done one yet, but I think it's possible. Although R&D sometimes yields something other than what you were thinking, I guess that deserves a wink wink kind of concept. It's possible to do the torque tweak on the 660s. I do know that's possible, because that's something that I've been involved with before. We're gonna torch this 660 off and get it warmed up off camera, because it's going to take a little bit, and then we're reconvening.
Play button.
Gently, because that thing moves. Okay, so we're wardrobed up. Let's take a look at the shaking, so we can see that when you're moving it around, this saw is a lot more solid, which that has its good and bad points. If you have white finger arthritis, it ends up being a little bit of an issue. If you do not, the guy's probably going to like the way this system is set up and designed, rubber mounted, if you will. Okay, so we just watched the 660, kind of taking names a little bit there. It's not even spinning up to 13,000. On a personal level, I was pretty impressed. I had Action J, and I'm thankful he was able to help with the tachometer operation. But technically, I'm not building them for speed. I'm building them for low-end grunt. And so if you put a 42 on that saw, which a lot of guys will, it actually will do okay. Mr. Greens ran that saw with a 42. So with any luck, he'll chime in once he gets the saw back for round 2 after he's had a chance to run it a little bit more. I did a little tweaking internally on it. I built that saw for him several years ago now, and so a little bit of an upgrade. I'm hoping that he'll find that is the case, but I'm going to have to wait for his response, I guess, technically. A couple of seconds is a lot of time to save on a cut that averages, I think, 21, because it's 20 by 22. I think that's what it was. Or 20 by 23. Whatever it ends up being, it's anytime you can save multiple seconds on a cut, that's picking up 2 or 3 trees in a day. If you're busheling, picking up 2 or 3 trees in a day, something like a saw like that will pay for itself in a really short period of time. Depends upon, of course, what you're getting paid per thousand, but I digress. So the latest addition into America is not the 500i, it is the 661 as far as I know. 500i has been around for a little while. These just became available as far as I know. So they have a lot of capabilities. We watched the one that I had pulling a 6-foot bar with 404 chain. That's 199 drivers of chain. I think the chain alone weighs 5 pounds. That saw actually did pretty well. It's kind of an early version torque monster, one of the 661s. It was an M-tronic, started life as. I swapped out the carburetor and put an unlimited coil. This saw has a limited coil, but it has an adjustable carburetor, as we can see on the side there. So they're kind of equal. We have predecessor and successor conceptually. We're going to put the hurt on this one, give it a run. So anyway, we kind of did a lot of discussion. That saw is kind of an icon in the timber falling world, I think, technically. So we're still working on, there's a lot of people not liking the 661s necessarily. I think they're starting to come around. I think this is going to be an excellent addition to replace that saw as opposed to the M-tronic one. Still not going to be able to beat on it because it's a spring mounted system, but it's a lot more stiff than the 500i. I do know that. What you end up with is a situation where you can run a long bar and you don't have a problem pulling the saw apart. 500i is not a 3-foot heavyweight bar kind of saw at all, where these two are, and you can run a 42, and I've seen where guys will put a 50 on the 660s, although they're a little underpowered at that point. Doesn't matter what you do to them, in my humble opinion anyway. So we kind of did a lot of discussion at the end. Looking forward to seeing what I can do with this saw. We're going to cyclize it. We're going to put a max flow system on it, so it's going to be a little bit better off. My prediction is it's going to win because that saw is kind of an Insano S, so we're taking it 2.5 steps up essentially, or 2 steps anyway on the 661 from what we see in the 660. So if I'm doing my job right, it's going to be winning. I guess that's what we're looking at. So long-winded, I guess, but we have some dialogue discussing what's going on between these two. Anyway, thanks for watching this session. Have a blessed day wherever you might be on God's green earth.